Individually and collectively, the 1942 Penn Relay champions are among the all-time Gettysburg greats. The group won the Middle Atlantic States Collegiate Athletic Association class and college class mile relays at the 1942 Penn Relays. The April 30th, 1942 issue of the Gettysburgian said the team was, quote, termed by George Walsh, coach of the Union College team which established the record back in 1920, as the best Middle Atlantic race I've ever seen. Mentor Walsh added that had Gettysburg drawn the inside lane, they would undoubtedly set a new record. The quartet also helped the Bullets to an undefeated dual slate in 1941, which was the college's only perfect season until 1993. The four men shone individually as well. Wayne Booker set the school record in the 440 three times, including twice as a freshman in 1941, and he won every 220 and 440-yard dash in which he competed for his entire career. He set the Eastern Pennsylvania Collegiate Conference record in 1942 by shaving more than a second off the previous record time in the 440. 1 week later, he collected the Middle Atlantic States record. Bill Everhart set the Gettysburg 100-yard dash record with a 9.5 in 1940. Earlier in the season, he had set the EPCC records in the 100 and 220-yard dashes. Over his final two seasons, he won 8 of 12 100-yard dashes. In the other 4, he finished either second or third behind his teammates. George Motter is the only 4-year letter winner among the group. He competed in the Penn Relays 4 times in 1941, 1942, 1943, and 1947. He finished 4th at the 1941 EPCC meet as a freshman and 2nd in 1942 as a sophomore. Joe Powers earned 3 letters in track and field and 2 in football, excelling in the 100 and 220-yard dashes, in the broad jump, and as a kick returner. He qualified for the 1941 Penn Relays in the 100 as a freshman, and the following year, he won the 100 at the Middle Atlantic States meet. As a sophomore on the gridiron, he scored a touchdown against Western Maryland and returned the opening kickoff 90 yards for a touchdown against Franklin and Marshall. The following year, he returned a kickoff for a touchdown against Bucknell. Booker, a Gettysburg native, spent 3 years at Gettysburg before leaving to serve his country during World War II. He later finished his education at the University of Pennsylvania, and he now resides in Hilton Head, South Carolina. Everhart, also a Gettysburg native, graduated from Gettysburg in 1943 with a degree in English. He resides in Reston, Virginia. Motter, a Taneytown, Maryland native, graduated from Gettysburg in 1947 with a degree in mathematics. He spent 38 years as the head of the specification department and 1 year as the head of quality control at Cambridge Rubber Company. He also worked as the production manager at Summer Enterprise before retiring in 1990. He and his wife Anna have been married for 56 years, and they reside in Taneytown, Maryland. They are the parents of 3 children, Mary Ann Barber, George Motter Jr., and David Motter, and they have 7 grandchildren. Powers, an Ardmore, Pennsylvania native, graduated in 1944 with a degree in economics. He passed away last October and is survived by his wife Carolyn, to whom he was married for 34 years. They have 9 children: Joseph Powers Jr., Michael Powers, John Powers, Linda Powers, Brian Powers, Cindy Fisher, Penny Boyd, Susan Powell, and Stuart D'Alba, 13 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. Mrs. Powers currently resides in Wayne, Pennsylvania. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce the 1942 Penn Relay champions represented by George Motter and Carolyn Powers.
I brought my notes along too. I'd first like to thank Gettysburg College for all that it has done for me over the years. Second, I'd like to thank my family that are here tonight. There's a whole table full of us down here who came. Our son George lives in Baltimore with his 2 boys. Our son David lives in Hanover with his wife and 3 children. We have a daughter, Mary Ann, who lives in Atlanta, and she has 2 sons, one of which is in the Marines, serving today. He has not, thank goodness, has not had to go to Iraq at this time. And I'd like to thank, of course, the Orange and Blue Club for giving us, I say us because there are 4 of us in this. Shortly after I received my letter from the college, I got a letter from the Reverend Robert Linders, who some of you possibly know, graduated in 1964. He was the half-mile champion in Gettysburg, and I think still holds the record for the half-mile here. It's funny that the 4 of us came together, 2 sprinters, a 440 man, and myself was running the half-mile. And but our coach, Pete Beeson, decided that we should do this thing. When I look back, at that time, there was no cross-country, is what I'm trying to say. Sometime in January or the 1st of February, we got together and started running. By the end of May, it was all over. So I don't think any of us, even Wayne, with all these championships, were really in any kind of condition as your athletes and your track are today. It's the way I got into track. Well, let's say it this way. When I first came, I've done a little singing in high school, and I came and I made the a cappella choir my freshman year. But before that, in high school, I came from Tawnytown, Maryland, where I live now with my wife, Anna. There was not any really organized track team at all. What we had was what we called a field meet. And all the high schools and the elementary schools got together, where now our town has a shopping center. Originally it was the Carroll County Fairgrounds. And what relays we had, we ran on the dirt track. It was a harness track, and we ran on that. So I didn't get too far there. When I came, as I say, I went to the choir, but I also decided to go out. I forgot. At that time, my senior year in high school, I won the county broad jump championship, or the long jump as it's called now, something over 19 feet. So I thought I would go out for track. When I got here, I went out and tried out, and Coach Beeson, Pete Beeson, that time, said, "Excuse me, my language, you can't get your ass off the ground. I'm going to make a runner out of you." And I went home and told my father that I was going to be a runner. He said, "Oh, you can't run. You don't have the stamina, the experience." But I did. And the first race, I have no idea who was against. I luckily came around and won. My father came up, rolled a stopwatch, and as I won, he was so excited he forgot to stop the stopwatch. As I said before, I wished also that we could have had at that time the equipment that you have now. What we had, about the only exercise equipment we had, was a pulley that you pulled to strengthen your arms. That's about all that we had. And for running, we ran out to the Peach Light and back and training and around the cinder track. My one disappointment in track, in 1943, after most of the fellows had left, school was let out early, but the conference still was going to have a track meet. And school let out early, but I ran around a baseball field that we had at home and did some training there. 3 days before the meet was to come, I developed 3-day measles. So I did not get, the time was ridiculously low and I probably could have won, but that's one of the disappointments that I have. What we did have at that time was a trainer, Romeo Capozzi. I don't know how many of you remember Romeo, but he kept us in conditions at that particular time. So that's about my story. Thank you very much again to the Orange and Blue Club for inducting us.
I'm proud to be Joseph Powers' wife. You can tell by about half of our family that we had a big one. We had 8 children, not 9 like was listed, and 13 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. He was a marvelous husband and father. After that, Gettysburg came next. He loved Gettysburg. He won many awards in the Army over 31 years, and it didn't mean anything to him like this would have. I'd like to thank Joseph Gutty for nominating him, and Cameron, for all the work you've done. That's my family down there, part of them. Thank you all.
I'd like to say one more thing. We have 2 other friends who came especially tonight, I guess in my honor, Jim and Arlene Shannon and their son Matthew. I thank them very much for coming.